Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, my dear friends. Allah bless you all. Okay, let's resume Al-Fatiha. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu wa sallama wa baraka ala Sayyidina wa Maulana Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een. اللهم لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وامنحنا يا ربنا علما وعملا وقربا يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم زدنا ولا تنقصنا وأكرمنا ولا تهنا وأعطنا ولا تحرمنا وآثرنا ولا تؤثر علينا وأرضنا وارض عنا يا كريم. Okay, so we were last looking at when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala praised some of Bani Israel, those who are fair and just, and they decree and they decide with the truth. And so now what we get is the discourse moves forward. Excuse me. The discourse moves forward, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us about some of the blessings that Bani Israel were given, and at the same time it's an opportunity to mention, the things that went wrong with them, where they were rejecting the gifts of God, and this cycle of disobedience, rebellion, and rejection of the authority of God continued with them. So they kept getting put into difficult situations because of their own actions. Right, so this is all. So the contemporaries of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and anyone after, that they can see and they take a lesson that these people of the past, they had every incentive to believe and obey God, but what they did is they kept veering from that and turning away from Him time after time after time after time, and that led them to just problems. It led them to many problems, and it was their own fault, right? So let us not do what they did. Let us accept what God has given us, thank Him for His blessings, believe in Him and His messengers, all of them, and obey. Right, so that's where what the message is supposed to be. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَقَطَّعْنَاهُمْ اثْنَتَيْ عَشْرَةَ أَسْبَاطًا أُمَمًا. We divided them into 12 tribes, each as a community. وَأَوْحَيْنَا إِلَى مُوسَى إِذِ اسْتَسْقَاهُ قَوْمُهُ أَنِ اضْرِبْ بِعَصَاكَ الْحَجَرَ فانبجست منه اثنتا عشرة عينا. And we revealed to Moses, when his people asked for water, strike the rock with your staff, then 12 springs gushed out. قد علم كل أناس مشربهم. Okay, so what's happening here? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَقَطَّعْنَاهُمُ اثْنَتَيْ عَشْرَةَ أَسْبَاطًا أُمَمًا. We chopped them up into 12 tribes, or you could say sub-tribes, and each. So the word itself, قَطَّعْنَا, indicates that there was a clear demarcation for each tribe. Where did the tribes come from? They were the Bani Israel, the children of Israel, the Prophet Yaqub alayhi salatu wasalam, which the name would roughly translate into Arabic as being Abdullah, the servant of God, right, the slave of God. So his 12 sons, Yusuf, Binyamin, and the others, their descendants, these were the 12 tribes. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that He divided Bani Israel into these 12 tribes. We get an indication of each tribe being a large, vast group, and them being completely distinct from the others. Each person knew which group they belonged to, and that group was distinct from each of the other 11 groups. and each one of them was an ummah, a group of people that were united on one thing. Here is a common ancestor who was a child of Yaqub alayhi salatu wassalam. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَأَوْحَيْنَا إِلَى مُوسَى, and we revealed to Musa. Wahi, as you know, is a quick and discreet form of communication from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to his prophets and messengers. Either it comes directly into their hearts, or he speaks to them like we said, Musa, or he sends a messenger such as Sayyidina Jibreel alayhi salatu wasalam, or another angel. And so he said, we revealed to Musa, إِذِ اسْتَسْقَاهُ قَوْمُهُ, when his people asked him for water, right? And this happened when they were in the desert. This happened when they were wandering in what is known in Arabic as the Tih Bani Israel. It's the part of Egypt that's not on the African continent, it's on the Eurasian continent. That area, it now belongs to Egypt, and that was the area that they wandered in for 40 years. Why? Because they were taken to a city, and there's a difference. Is it Beit al-Maqdis? Is it Jerusalem? Or was it Jericho, Ariha in Arabic, right? And they were told, enter that city. There are tyrants, people who wrong and harm others, they're tyrannical towards others. Remove them and their oppression. God has given you this land. And then they decided not to. No, they said to Sayyidina Musa, you go with your Lord and both of you fight. We're going to sit right here. A'udhu billah. So then, because of that rebelliousness, because of this weakness that was within them, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala punished them by having them stay in the desert for 40 years. So now it was meant to change them and improve them, but whilst they're there, obviously there are needs, and they start asking and they start demanding things from God, through Sayyidina Musa. Eventually they started asking for different types of food, which we saw in Surah Al-Baqarah. And it's a case of, you're not in a 5-star hotel. You're in a difficult situation because of your own choices and actions, and God has given you this punishment so you can think about what you did and you can improve. But some people choose not to. So anyway, so he said, we revealed to Moses, إِذِ اسْتَسْقَاهُ قَوْمُهُ, that when his people asked him for water. And Imam al-Biqa'i says here that qawm, once again, that meaning of strength. He's saying that it seems like they were being impatient. They were being impatient with their trial, and they should have been showing more patience. They had the potential to, but they didn't, right? But Allah gave them this water, right? I'm not saying that they were just meant to be survived there without water. I'm sure they must have had some means, because they were traveling all that time, right? They were collecting water and whatever. But he said that the things about the food and the drink and everything, they were all gifts from God, despite their impatience and their other rebellion. So he says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed to Moses when they asked Moses for water. So they will have gone to Sayyidina Musa, ask your Lord to provide us with some water. And Sayyidina Musa alayhi salatu wasalam will have prayed to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and when he was given that water, they were supposed to have celebrated and thanked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for that. So anyway, what was revealed, and Tafsiriyah telling us what was revealed, أن يضرب بعصاك الحجر فانبجست منه 12 عينا. So he said, we revealed to him, strike with your stick, your staff, the rock. And so obviously this staff is has already been the locus of many miracles, changing into a serpent and back multiple times. So with your staff, strike the rock. So some of the ulama said that there was a particular rock that he was told to strike. Others said that it's just referring to a rock. So strike a rock there, and then the water will come. And so he says, so we pay attention to that. He said that we said to him, strike the rock with your staff, or idrib, with your staff, strike the rock, And so as Allah is saying, it's as though He said, strike the rock with your staff and water shall start to spring forth from from the ground. But the way it's presented in the Arabic is Allah says, strike the rock, and then automatically the water started springing out of the ground. It's as though Sayyidina Musa, it didn't need to be said that he obeyed Allah and did exactly what he was told. All Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had to do was tell him, strike the rock, and then there we are, we got the result. So he did obey. So Sayyidina Musa struck the rock, and the word here is فَانْبَجَسَتْ مِنْهُ اثْنَتَا عَشْرَةَ عَيْنًا. And so here we've got this word fanbajasat. In Surah Al-Baqarah we've got the other word fanfajarat. So inbijas is when water starts seeping out of something slowly, and infijar is when it starts coming out in great quantities, right? So why the discrepancy? This verse is telling us about one stage, and Surah Al-Baqarah was telling us about a different stage. So he struck the rock, and then in 12 different places, water started flowing out of the ground for a weak flow. Initially, just seeping out, and then it got stronger and stronger until there was whole springs gushing forth from the ground, and that's what happened. So then he said, قَدْ عَلِمَ كُلُّ أُنَاسٍ مَشْرَبَهُمْ. Every people knew their mashrab. Mashrab is the place where they drink from. Every single group. The word unas kind of indicates that they were large groups. Each one of these 12 groups were large groups. The word, this word I didn't touch on earlier, asbat, plural of sibt in Arabic, which means a grandchild. So the descendants of those those people formulated those tribes. So the grandchild of Ishaq, right? The grandchildren of Ishaq. So then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَظَلَّلْنَا عَلَيْهِمُ الْغَمَامَ. We shaded them with clouds. وَظَلَّلْنَا عَلَيْهِمُ الْغَمَامَ وَأَنزَلْنَا عَلَيْهِمُ الْمَنَّ وَالسَّلْوَى. And we sent down to them manna and quails. كُلُوا مِن طَيِّبَاتِ مَا رَزَقْنَاكُمْ. Eat from the good things we have provided for you. وَمَا ظَلَمُونَ وَلَكِنْ كَانُوا أَنفُسَهُمْ يَظْلِمُونَ. And eat from the good things we have provided for you. They certainly did not wrong us, but wronged themselves. And this was the next stage. Another blessing Allah gave them, that they have to wander in this desert, and Allah's taking care of their drink. Allah's taking care now of the heat. So وَظَلَّلْنَا عَلَيْهِمُ الْغَمَامَ. We shaded them with a cloud, or with clouds. It can mean. Some of the scholars have said that the word ghamam is specific to a white cloud, as opposed to a grey cloud, a dark grey cloud, which carries a lot of rain, a lot of water that will rain down. So he said, we shaded them, we shaded over them, for shade we provided over them clouds, right? And so this is also a gift. They were in the desert and they've had a difficult time there, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protects all of them with a clear sign, a clear miracle. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives them something that clearly shows Allah is looking after you, Allah is taking care of you, Allah is giving you this blessing. So you'd expect them to reciprocate with obedience and gratitude. وَأَنزَلْنَا عَلَيْهِمُ الْمَنَّ وَالسَّلْوَى. And we sent down on them al-man and as-salwa. We talked about this in Surah Al-Baqarah. So al-man is manna, which is, it's the resin of a tree. Sometimes trees give off a sap, and that sap can be collected. And so this sap this manna was white, and it's sweet, very carbohydrate rich food, and so it was a sweet food. And but there's various positions on how they would come about it. Some of the ulama said it would be there, present on the floor, and then they would just scoop it up and put it into containers. So he gave them manna and a salwa. Salwa were quails. So the birds, they're not very big birds. Maybe a bit bigger, so they got larger bodies at the bottom, and so maybe a bit about the size of a pigeon, or maybe about a bit smaller. Apparently the meat was very tasty, very delicious meat that they had, that they provided. And some of the ulama say that one of the qualities of this is that it softens the person's heart. So if someone's like harsh or gruff or whatever, eating these just generally tends to affect a person in a way that softens their heart. وَظَلَّلْنَا عَلَيْهِمُ الْغَمَامَ وَأَنزَلْنَا عَلَيْهِمُ الْمَنَّ وَالسَّلْوَى. So their food was taken care of. And so in the morning they were given this. Apparently the quails would come in the evening. They'd collect easily. Like there was no effort, there was no hunting, there was no having to run or chase after it. The quails would come, they could collect as many as they wanted. Those that were still young or not fat, they'd leave them and let them grow a bit more. And they just collect what they needed and slaughter. There are some that say that this would happen for 6 days a week, with the exception of the Sabbath, the Saturday. But they would collect enough on Friday to get them over to Sunday. And this is food. Remember that in essence they're in a prison, right? They were prisoned and they were sentenced to wander that desert for that time because of their rebellion against God. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given them ease. They don't have the worry or the panic or shortages of water. There's no shortage of food, and there's the shade. And still, they wanted, eventually they got fed up with this. We don't want this, right? I tell you, Lord, to give us, other things. They wanted cucumbers and lentils and onions and all these things. And no, right? Your own actions got you there. So you have to pay the price. It was a sentence. But when Allah gave them this food, it was delicious, right? Delicious food. It's as though He said, "Kulu min tayyibati ma razaqnakum." Eat. So this in Arabic is ibaha, right? It's not a command. It's not a command saying eat, but rather here, enjoy yourselves. Eat of the delicious things, the tayyibat, the many delicious things we have provided for you. It's a repetitive, constant providing. And then He says, وَمَا ظَلَمُونَ, and they didn't wrong us. Meaning, despite all of these blessings that they got, they still disobeyed God and they still acted up. And in reality, these actions of theirs didn't harm Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَمَا ظَلَمُونَ وَلَكِنْ كَانُوا أَنفُسَهُمْ يَظْلِمُونَ. But rather, their own selves they continuously wronged, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't benefit from our good deeds. He's not harmed by our sins. He's not affected by us asking and Him giving and giving and giving. None of this affects Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He's perfect beyond every need and any need, right? But it's rather us who need Allah. And so what they did is they thought, they were committing sins individually and collectively, and maybe they had this idea that we'll get Him back. But He's saying no, they didn't wrong us by harming. They harmed themselves by disobeying the commands of God and giving Sayyidina Musa and Sayyidina Harun alayhim as-salatu wasalam a very difficult time. They didn't harm Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All they succeeded in was in harming their own selves. Allah protect us. وَمَا ظَلَمُونَ وَلَكِنْ كَانُوا أَنفُسَهُمْ يَظْلِمُونَ. Okay, so let's stop here. And I was going to do another verse, but the following two verses follow on. So we'll stop here and I'll continue from this point, inshallah, and we'll look at the next few verses. Allah bless you all. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen.